Shalom to all of you men. We're continuing here in the 18th book of Israel here this evening, tested and proven, and we're on chapter 23 tonight. Chapter 23, this is page 240. Hopefully you have your books with you. If not, I highly recommend bringing your book with you to class because it's great to highlight things and take notes. You can cross-reference things that are said and jot down the notes there and to have them for future reference. But if you turn over to page 240, again, this is chapter 23, and the title here is, The House of Yahweh is Training Now for the Authority Originally Given to Satan to Create and Maintain Flesh. So this ability that Satan had to create and maintain flesh, this is something that she lost when she rebelled. Okay, when she rebelled, she lost this ability right here. And that's what we're going to talk about in the sermon. Pastor talks a lot about obedience and a lot about rebellion. And we know that obeying is one of the key things for us to make it into that position of authority where we will have what Satan lost and a lot of other talents and abilities as well. But so she had this ability and she lost it. She lost it when she rebelled. So again, the title here, The House of Yahweh is Training Now. And remember, we're going through a training process. This is what this is all about in these last days is our training right now to prove to Yahweh that we can do this right now. This is our one and only opportunity. We do not get a second opportunity at this. And not everyone is called out in these last days. So, but of the called out ones, this is our opportunity right now. We have to take it. We will not be given another opportunity. So the House of Yahweh is training now for the authority originally given to Satan to create and maintain flesh. And, I know we can read these words here, create and maintain flesh, but if you think of the wisdom and the knowledge that is in just those couple words right there and what you have to understand to be able to do that, that would probably blow our minds right now just to try to comprehend all the use of the microorganisms and, creating it, but then maintaining it as Yahweh did as he created all things. So these are some very special talents that Yahweh intends to give his people. Okay, let's look at page 240 here. Let's start off in verse 2. I want you to remember this news today. You got so much to remember. You really need to concentrate on this because Yahweh's actually getting you ready right now to raise the dead. And remember, we just had the Feast of Trumpets, 11, 12 days ago. And that trumpets there signifies the raising of the dead. The sounding the trumpets, it also signifies the warning that's going out, the message of the last trumpeter. But part of that is the raising of the dead. And this is an ability that will be given to the last day's work, the last day's house of Yahweh. So Yahweh is actually getting you ready right now to raise the dead. He's taking all the unbelief away from you and is wanting to give you this great authority. You will receive it if you don't turn to rebellion. Okay, if you don't turn to rebellion. Now, I know we could say, well, I'm not going to rebel. I'm not going to turn to rebellion. But really understand what rebellion is. Sometimes we might not realize the little things we do, that could be looked at as rebellion if we're disobedient. So, all that little bit of rebellion we have to get rid of. So you will receive it if you don't turn to rebellion. He doesn't care how strong you are or how far you can fly. What he cares about is, will you obey? Will you obey? That's it. Will you obey? And remember, Pastor just said recently, that's what Yahweh wants to see, whether or not we're going to obey his voice. Whether or not we're going to obey his voice, his instruction. And we're going to see here, as some have said in the past, well, that's not a law. That's not written. I can't find that in the Ten Commandments. I can't find that written anywhere. But if the one sent said it, then it is law, and we do need to follow it. So will you obey is the question. Well, this week I was so joyous because we're reaching all the foreign countries. And in verse 3 here, the foreign countries are saying, we're coming to the feast. That's the beautiful part. A lot of them are saying they've already received their visas. Yes, they're already received their visas. All they need now are the letters from us to welcome them to the feast, which are being sent right now. And then verse 4, I tell you, if you could just think of the speed here compared to 1934. Now, 6,000 years mankind traveled with horse and buggy. I mean, very, very simple method of travel. But then we come all the way down here, 1934, where the last days begins, the last generation here, and the last generation, and then knowledge picks up. Yahweh allowed it to increase. And it's not only the knowledge that mankind has used to develop the weapons of mass destruction. That was how they took the knowledge, and they created devices that could totally annihilate mankind, and that's what it would come to if Yahweh wouldn't step in and stop it at the very last, which we know he's going to for the sake of his work. But also that knowledge we see increased so that the message could reach to all the world. If we didn't have that technology to be able to go out through the internet, the message would not be able to travel all around the world like it does. So as mankind took the knowledge, and this is usually what we see, when someone is guided and led by Satan, they take it and they use it for their own destruction and their own evil, wicked purposes. But Yahweh shows at his house, we use that knowledge for getting out the message. And that's what we see here. That's what Pastor is referring to in verse 4. I tell you, if you could just think of the speed here compared to 1934, when I would take a letter from Mother and walk it to town, or drive the wagon and team to town to mail that letter, which took it by Pony Express. No, Pony Express was stopping at that time, I think, but it was almost that bad and that slow just to go to the next state. It would get there within 14 working days from Oklahoma to Texas. Now we can send a message or send an email, and it's almost boop. It's kind of instant there, and it's already reached its destination, or can even watch live all over. So that's a technology, but remember, that is for the purpose of preaching and publishing that message to all the world so that the end can come. Okay, that has to be. That's part of the prophecies which we know will be 100% fulfilled. Okay, so they sent it by computer. That's the way they reach the world, by computer. The minute they get a message, the next minute the people get a reply. The minute the mailroom gets this, our people get it, who are sitting watching the computer, waiting on these things to come in. And the telephones, then they turn right around, and within 10 seconds, the person's got his request. You can't beat that, brethren. Well, yeah, you can. You can with Yahweh. When Yahweh gives you your subconscious mind, you'll be able to beat it. But other than that, this ability that we have to communicate right now is the way that this message, the great message of the kingdom of Yahweh, behold, the kingdom of Yahweh is at hand, can reach the whole world. Okay, let's look down here at, and in verse 8 and 9, Pastor talks about some of the persecution that the house of Yahweh has gone through. Remember the extremely high bond that was put, the $10 million bond that was put on his head. And, that was a lifting up for what purpose? So all the world could see. It was the gaining of attention. It was allowing the world, it was drawing attention there so that people could see, hey, what's going on here? What is this all about? How come this man has this $10 million bond on him? And, again, Yahweh works in ways that we don't always understand. And the amount of people that saw that, checked that out, were drawn from that, we might never know, but we know that Yahweh's always working and his plan is always going forth. Okay, verse 10. Well, now we're being lifted up even more. The countries are saying, oh, they're going to the house of Yahweh. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Stamp their visas. Yeah, quite a change has taken place. Well, what else did I want to show you? I don't have time to look through this stack of papers, but possibly next week. This is a beautiful picture. And the picture that he shows here is a class that is being taught down in South Texas, in Laredo, where those that were being charged with certain charges, if they went through the peaceful solution, if they took that course and they passed that course, they had their charges dropped and they were dismissed because they took that course. And that really, if you think about it, that really is Yahweh's way right there, teaching and training an individual. Instead of just slapping the fines on them or sending them to jail, which we know isn't going to help. It's the teaching and training that an individual needs. And that's what they were getting down here, and that's what Pastor had a lot of joy about. This is a beautiful picture, and he's showing that, a man receiving his basically being congratulated and receiving the dismissal as his charges were dismissed because he took the peaceful solution and completed it. Okay. In verse 13, I want to prove it to all the world, and I can do it. And this is about the peaceful solution. He said, we can do it in 12 months. We could turn this whole world around in 12 months. Now, this was done in less time than that. We could turn the whole world. It would take some maneuvering, but we're fully set up here at the House of Yahweh to do all the work. Yes, and take this thing to the entire world. We're fully equipped to teach it for 12 months or for longer, forever, in fact. What Yahweh is doing, like I said, He's getting you ready for the great authority that He wants to give you, and you're just about there. So first off, the 12 months that Pastor's talking about, that's the continually teaching, without any of the distractions from the world, the outside influences. It would be a straight, time period of 12 months there that he's referring to, with nothing but the peaceful solution and the laws of Yahweh being taught, and that could turn people around. That would get them turned around if they could take that, if they would accept that teaching. We know that they would have to accept it for it to work in their life, because if they refuse it, it won't work. You have to accept the peaceful solution in order for it to work. But again, it would take getting rid of all the other distractions. We know that Yahweh's plan is going forward, and mankind is going to learn the lesson that rejecting Yahweh's way brings about severe curses. That is the lesson that mankind has to learn. They have to learn it. Yahweh has to let this thing go, because otherwise they would say, we never really had a fair opportunity. You never let us prove it. We could have turned it around right at the last. But He's not going to, they'll never be able to say that. They will never be able to say that, because Yahweh is going to make sure that it goes all the way, and they're going to see the full results of what sin brings. Verse 14, I thought this bread sack showed a lot of wisdom. This is the time period in Samuel that they're speaking of here. And here's where Pastor begins, he gets into this part about the obedience and the, how important it is to obey, and how these people who rebelled, they lost so much of what they could have had. So in verse 14, this is a time period in Samuel that they're speaking of here. 1 Samuel 14. 1 Samuel 8, if you remember, says they wanted a king to reign over them. So right away, what were they doing? They were rebelling, but they were rejecting the priest that Yahweh had given them. They didn't want to be ruled by the priest, and Samuel was feeling down, and Yahweh said, Samuel, look, they rejected me. They didn't reject you, they rejected me, which, as they rejected the priest, they rejected Yahweh. But they wanted a king, so they rebelled. They rejected Yahweh's guidance. So Yahweh said, yes, go ahead, take a king. But this is the way it's going to be. You see, He told them, He said, you can have it, but I'm going to warn you ahead of time, this is the way it's going to be for you. Right here, you're going to see what taking a king brings you. Just like they're seeing now what rejecting Yahweh's laws bring them. At the same time, Yahweh didn't let His work go. He brought forth His work in spite of the fact that they had turned against Him and wanted a king to reign over them instead of He Himself and the priests. So in 1 Samuel, they wrote this verse, and this was the bread sack. Let us say to Yahweh's chosen branch, just as Jonathan's armor bearer said to him, do all that you have in mind. Here we are with you, Yisrayl, heart and soul. Well, that's the only thing going to get you there, brethren. That's the only thing that's going to get you there. It's got to be your full heart and soul, with all your might, body and soul, as Yahweh put it. It's got to be everything. Our whole being has to desire that. And we've heard a lot of sermons about putting these laws within our hearts, the desire, the loving these laws, not the rejection or the, why do we have to do this, but the loving performing this law. Well, getting you ready, I've brought this many times, and I just want to touch on it this morning, the prophecies, the gematria. And everything we have done, everything I've done since Yahweh called me, it's been recorded and it's been tagged for a certain time. And I'm going to skip down here a little bit. Pastor says, I would put that in there because I'm sure Yahweh has it in the Gematria too. He's got you tagged. He's got all of us tagged. Remember, Yahweh knew every one of us. That's why we have this opportunity. No one can come to the house of Yahweh unless Yahweh first calls them. That's what it tells us in the Scriptures. So we have to be called, as we know, and then the person, they have that opportunity. But what is not decided yet is whether or not we're going to make it. I mean, we know that there will be those that will make it, but individually, that's up to us. That's up to us. So he's got you tagged to this work in these last days, to receiving this great authority. That's what this is all about, right here. Receiving this great authority. Every one of you here, children and all, are already tagged for this kingdom, for this authority. You don't have to worry about how smart you are, how strong you are, whether you can pick up a building or throw it 10 miles. That wouldn't impress Yahweh. What impresses Yahweh, and here it is right here, is your humble, submissive attitude where you are willing to humble yourself forever and forever obey. You know, that's it. That's what impresses Yahweh, is the humility. Remember the Scriptures, how they say, you know, humble yourself and Yahweh will lift you up? Yahweh will do it. Yahweh will bring you forward. But what impresses him is the humble, submissive attitude and the willingness for us to humble ourselves and forever obey. Okay, let's look at, let me see. Oh yeah, here's the part here in verse 18. Well, try to get this in your mind. Yahweh did all this work for 6,000 years to bring you forward, but you had a bunch of rebellious nimwits that had stubbornness in their minds, and they said, well, this is not sin. I'm going to do this whether Yisrael Hawkins likes it or not. No matter what he says, I'm going to do this no matter what Moshe said. Remember how they rejected Moshe? Remember they came before Moshe? What makes you so holy, Moshe? You think you're the only one Yahweh is working with? So they rejected Moshe. Some have rejected Yisrael Hawkins. Well, Yahweh went to so much trouble in Acts chapter 7 to show this. They rejected Moshe, who brought forth the doctrine of life. You know, he presented them with life at that time, but they rejected it. It wasn't a law. It wasn't one of the 10 commandments that said, go out there and pick up manna for 6 days. Try to find that in the 10 commandments. Is it in the 10 commandments? No, of course not. And show yourself how stupid you are for even thinking it. It's not a law. Yeah, it is a law because Moshe, the one sent, said it. And that's it. That's it right there. If the one sent says it, it is a law. And it is required of us to obey it. If that's not proof enough, Yahweh comes behind what I say and backs it up. And that we've seen time and time again. You know, look how many times Pastor has brought out something just regarding health. You know, the benefits of the sun, the benefits of salt. You know, just how to be careful with certain the defilement out there in the world, going out into the stores, the shopping carts. And then lo and behold, you know, here come the articles and the proof backing it up. Yahweh says, I'm the one that honors the words of my servant. You know, and he backs them up. He backs up those words. And that's what Pastor's saying here. So, you know, it is up to us to be obedient to what he says. That's what will get us that great authority that Pastor's talking about here, that Yahweh wants to give us, that Satan lost. Well, you just saw we went to extremes to bring this today. Okay, let's look down at here at Yeshua tells you, this is in verse 22. Well, Yeshua tells you that in Matthew chapter 7. They could have. They started with it, but they turned, and after you rebel, you can't teach righteousness. You're teaching with a forked tongue, as the Indians used to say. You can't teach one thing and live another. You can't teach a humble attitude and be rebellious at the same time. You must not eat, for in that day that you eat of it, you will surely die. You know, and what Pastor's saying there is, you know, remember years ago, he said, when you teach others not to sin, what occurs? You stop sinning yourself. You teach yourself not to sin. He says you can't teach one thing, but live something else, practice something else. That doesn't work with Yahweh. Then he says, you're going to perish. Well, Yeshua said, unless you repent, you're going to perish. Okay, let's look down in the middle here of verse 23. So we see, in Genesis there, remember, we had Adam and Eve. And what occurred with Adam and Eve? Well, they went missing for their Sabbath appointments. They didn't appear before Yahweh. And Yahweh said, I was looking around and I didn't see him. So middle of verse 23 here, well, he looked around and he couldn't see them. He wondered, are they sick? Well, he went hunting them and he found them. Why weren't you here? Well, Satan had entered their minds through all of her workers and all of her poles. And, that pastor has told us so many times about the importance of our eternal appointments, our weekly Sabbath day appointments and these feast days, our meetings with Yahweh, and how if we miss something on the Sabbath day, we miss a little bit of the piece of the puzzle. And he said, you might never hear that tree fall. So, and again, we see this example. Remember, these things, they're written for us. They're written for our learning. Not for us to make the same mistakes they made, but to do better. Not to make those same mistakes. Well, Yeshua told you all about those. Remember, the pulls of the riches. And this was the parable of the sower that were the 3 out of 4, and some fell in the by the tares, and they grew up and they choked them, and some didn't have the soil that was rich, or didn't cultivate the soil that they were in, so they never grew, they never sprouted forth. Some got pulled away. And as Pastor continues here, he says, the pulls of riches, the pulls of the earth, the pulls of entertainment, the pulls of stupidity, like punching buttons, bringing your phones to services, so it'll interrupt you, and you'll have to look around and go, what did I do with that phone? Let me see. Who's this calling me? You think Yahweh's not watching? Come on now, get serious. Get this sin out of your lives. It is sin. When you let anything interrupt you from hearing what I've got to say, it's sin. That's pretty important. You hear what he's saying? If we let things interrupt us, that's sin. Well, that in itself is sin. If you do it deliberately, it's a deliberate rebellion, and it brings death. So in Genesis 4 there, starting with verse 6, you see what sin brings with Cain. Well, before you go there, look at Genesis 3:14. So Yahweh said to the serpent, you got to get this point. Everybody, he says, concentrate fully and get this point. If you're walking around somewhere, you're not getting this point. If you burn in hell, you can't blame me. I'm doing my best to get everyone in that kingdom. Remember how the prophet Jeremiah said, if the righteous man, if he warns the wicked, where does that blood fall then if that man perishes? On his own head. That's right. It's on him. We would never be able to say, well, Yisrael Hawkins didn't warn us. He didn't tell us that. He didn't explain that to us. We'll never be able to say that. Sermon after sermon after sermon after sermon, he's brought out everything that we need to fit into that mold there that Yahweh needs us to fit into to be in that kingdom. I'm doing my best to get everyone in that kingdom. And yes, I get harsh sometimes when you deliberately rebel, and I know you're going to burn in hell. Well, Genesis 3:14. So Yahweh said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are bitterly cursed. You are bitterly cursed. This was not Yahweh cursing this woman, but she's bitterly cursed. I established you over all flesh. So here goes back to the title here, and I want to read that again on page 240. The House of Yahweh is training now for the authority originally given to Satan to create and maintain flesh. Okay, so Yahweh said to the serpent, you're bitterly cursed. Okay, and this was not Yahweh cursing this woman, but she's bitterly cursed. I established you over all flesh. Okay, you see, she's losing here. She's going to lose out. She's losing out on the blessings here that Yahweh had given her. Over all living things. You think he's going to do that again? You've got to be the craziest person in this room if you do. He's not going to allow this rebellion again, ever. We're never going to have death again. We're never going to have wars again. And this is, once Yahweh establishes, and he takes control here, after the end of this, and Yahweh rolls back the clouds, just at the very last part, right before, all hope is gone, Yahweh's going to step in there, and he's going to show us, he's still in full control, as always. But once he establishes his kingdom, and that righteousness prevails, and you see Yahweh's teachers going forth, and as the prophet said, you won't be able to turn around without hearing a voice behind you say, this is the way, walk in it. That's how many teachers of righteousness will be going forth and teaching and training and guiding. But we're going to do away. Remember the prophecies, there will be war no more. We will put a stop to that, and it's not going to be again. We're never going to have death again. We're never going to have wars again. Once Yahweh's kingdom takes over, once we're given that authority, wars are going to end. They will learn war no more. That teaching and training of mankind to take advantage of one another, to get over on their neighbor, to go and, take their, as we see so much fighting over, who has rights to this untapped oil and gas there reserve, and how can we say the 200 miles belong to us so we can get it? That's not going to be ever again. That's not going to be. We're going to do away with that. Once Yahweh's kingdom takes over, once we're given that authority, wars are going to end. Death is going to end. You're going to be training people to do what you do. If you don't have that white garment on, okay, and what's that white garment? Excellent. That total humility on, you won't be there. That's the incredible, important facet there of being clothed with that white garment. Having that humility there to where we would never rise up against someone who is in authority over us, and continue always to obey and never even think about rebelling. So it's the total humility. We won't be there. Well, if you crept in some way, and what was the parable? The thing about it, Yeshua covered all these things. He covered all these points here. What occurred to the one who got in without his wedding garment on? Friend, how did you get in here? How did you get in here? You don't have the white garment on. You don't have the humility. And he was found out. So it's not that we're going to sneak in if we don't have that on. We have to fit. We have to fit in that pattern. If you crept in some way, you'll be taken out. He always shows all of that. It's bits and pieces everywhere. I'm saying, it's bits and pieces, everything I'm saying is shown. We can see, we know it's in Scripture. Everything a pastor is saying here, it's exactly found there. Yeshua showed a lot of it in the parables. He showed how important it was that when a person finds that righteous way, that way to the kingdom, what did he do? What did the man who do that? He found that great treasure. He went and sold everything he had, and he focused 100% on following that way. And that's the conviction that we need to have, that we've got to put forth the effort right now. We're not going to get another opportunity to put forth the effort. It has to be right now. This is the last time period we get to prove to Yahweh. It's the only time period we get to prove to Yahweh that we want to be there, that we can put on this robe of righteousness, this robe of humility. Well, you are bitterly cursed. I will establish you. I established you over all things. Well, that's our job. That's the authority we're going to get. So you remember everything under Yeshua, but Yeshua, our high priest, he's going to turn that over to his house. We'll never be over our high priest, Yeshua, in any way, but together we will govern. We will govern. That's our job. That's the authority we're going to get. What Satan threw away and the gods threw away, we're going to get. That's what we've been training for 6,000 years. All the work that went before us is for our training. Mankind has been training for 6,000 years. So this whole plan As Pastor mentioned, the whole plan of the 6,000 years coming down to the very last part of it, the last days, and now the last 3.5 years that we know will be cut short, it's all hinging right now. This whole plan comes down to this last couple years, the last couple months here. And we're going to see this authority that Satan and the gods threw away be given to Yahweh's people. Yahweh bless all of you. Have a great, wonderful Sabbath day. If you would all please stand. It's my opportunity to present to you the great Kanan Yahawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, men. Please be seated. Hope everyone's doing well today. Enjoying the chilly weather. Somebody said to me, I said, "Hey, how you enjoying this weather?" "Oh man, I am so glad it is cool now." I said, "Yeah, okay, I like the hot weather." Now, skinny guys don't generate too much heat. All right. We're on chapter 23 here. Pick up where the great Kwan Zephaniah left off. Just trying to open my book here. In case someone's just joining us, we're on the 18th book of Yisrayl, chapter 23, and the sermon is entitled, "The House of Yahweh is Training Now for the Authority Originally Given to Satan to Create and Maintain Flesh." Training for the authority originally given to Satan to create and maintain flesh. And like the great Khan Zephaniah was talking about there, one of these key characteristics that we need to develop that Satan didn't have was this spirit of humility, this white garment, that humility that each and every person that Yahweh is bringing up has to develop, has to have within them. You've seen it through the years. Yeshua, he was an example of it. Moshe, after he got trained, he developed this humble character, this humble attitude. You remember how Moshe was when he was still in Egypt? I remember, and Pastor explaining it to you, he thought that he knew what he was going to do. He knew what he was brought up and trained and prophesied to do. His mother taught him these things. Remember, his mother was the one that raised him in the house of Pharaoh for those years until he got old enough. But he understood what his job was, what his purpose was, knowing that he was drawn out not only from the water, but from "you only have I known of all the people on the face of this earth." He was drawn out for a special purpose, and it was prophesied and foretold hundreds of years before, that your people are going to suffer under the hands of the gods for 400 and something odd years, and then I'm going to bring them out. And Yahweh's always used a person to guide and lead his house in righteousness. And this is the pattern that it was from the beginning, and it's the pattern that it's going to be throughout all eternity as we grow and we expand and we receive positions and become captains of tens and hundreds of thousands and millions and billions. When we are the ones sent out to lead and guide, they're going to come to and submit to us just like we do to our teacher. And this is the pattern that has always been established, just like you see in the family and a husband. You don't see two husbands, right? You see a husband and then a wife and then the children and the servants. And so this is the pattern of the family. And so, once Moshe got to this point where Yahweh can use him, then he thought to himself, "Oh yeah, Yahweh, I can't do it now. Send somebody else. I'm not worthy to do this." And Yahweh said, "That's exactly the character I need right there. Now, you're not going to get out of doing this job because I called you to do this job. But Yahweh, I'm slow of tongue and so, okay, look, you're not getting out of the job. I'll send Aaron. He'll be your spokesperson, but you're still going to do the job. Okay? Because he was perfectly trained and fitted for that job, irregardless of what he thought he had as far as flaws or insecurities or whatever. Yahweh had trained him to do that job of bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. Just like Yahweh trained our pastor and overseer to bring us out of this Egypt in this time period in these last days, fully trained, made him of quick understanding. He has not held back his Spirit holy from being poured out upon him. And of course, he's pouring it out upon us when we come and sit before him at his feet, and when we listen to him on the Sabbaths, and read the books of Yisrayl and listen to the sermons. And we have all types of avenues to where we can continually have this golden oil. We should be like Yana's mother, the widow who Elishar, can't remember if it was Elishar or Eliah, who was sent to her, and her jars of oil for that time period of famine and drought never went empty during that whole period. So it should be also with us. Our jars of oil, of righteousness, of this righteous teaching, should never go empty in this time period, because we've got it, brother. I mean, we've got way more than it's abundantly supplied to us in these last days. So here we are here. Let's see here. Let's just back up to verse 28 there, where the great Khan just left. He says, "You are bitterly cursed. I established you over all living things." He said, that's our job. That's the authority we're going to get. What Satan threw away and the gods threw away, that's what we're going to get. And sometimes I know it seems a vast thing to consider what Yahweh is training us for, especially when you consider Genesis 1:26, where Yahweh already said that, this is the purpose, this is your purpose for which I'm calling you out and training you, so you can have authority over the creation to lead and guide it and to keep it as well. We won't necessarily have to, lead the cows. Okay, look, you go over in the field and you eat grass and make sure you eat a certain amount a day. No, their boundaries are already established. They already know what they need to do, but we will keep it the way Yahweh created it to be. Remember in Genesis when Yahweh went through the reestablishment or setting up what was already existing before the flood, and after that Yahweh had to fix it because of what Satan and the gods and their sons did on the earth, and the earth brought forth the flood to destroy that. The dinosaurs and all the wicked creations that were in existence at that time. But Yahweh brought it back to the way it was originally, and he said it was right. In other words, it was righteous in the way he created it. Nothing had to be added to it, didn't have to take anything away from it. It was perfect in the way that it was created. It's going to be our jobs to maintain it. Remember, to maintain these things and to keep them from going out of alignment, like Pastor says in the title here. Create and maintain. Maintain. Remember, to maintain something is to keep it in a great working order, right? Sometimes we let certain things get out of working order. We don't take care of vehicles. People, I've seen where people, all they do is they put gas in the car, and that's it. Just gas in the car. And my father-in-law used to be a mechanic, and I remember him telling me about an experience where this person brought in this, I don't know if it was a Buick Roadmaster or something, but it was running really bad. And he went to change the oil in the car first thing, and I think he said he only got like a half a quart out of the thing, And if you know anything about cars, usually they take anywhere from 4 to 6 quarts, depending on the motor size and so forth. But he said the inside of the motor was so caked up with grime and grit and grunge and so forth. He said he was surprised that the thing could even run, right? Because the owner didn't maintain the vehicle. They didn't take care of it to keep it in great working order. And typically the only time we look to start to figure what we need to do is when we start to run into problems, right? You got to change the oil? I thought the motor kept it changing and, running and everything, I thought you got to put air in the tires? I thought it kind of swole up in the heat and did it that way, And sometimes it's a matter of education. People don't know, but our bodies as well and our minds have to be continuously maintained so that our bodies and our minds could be kept in great working order. And of course, we do it through study, through prayer, through acts of righteousness, and so forth, and being taught. But the gods, they threw it away. They remember that I think that was the word I was thinking about the last time I don't know, did a class or It was the difference between us and the gods is the gods had this power and they weren't proven. You know, the sons of Yahweh had the power and they weren't proven. In other words, they didn't have to prove and qualify and show that they could handle this authority that Yahweh is going to give to mankind. What they had, you know, the ability to do this, Yahweh allowed it to be and showed that without this training and without developing a righteous character and without being proven, this is the way that a person will go. And that's exactly what they did. By the time we get there, as the scripture says, we will have proven ourselves obedient to the law, completely obedient to the law, which requires humility, right? It requires humility on our parts to obey the things that are written and the things that are told to us. And don't forget the key element that we also need, this generation to believe without seeing, right? Let's look down to verse 30. He says, "And I will establish you over all flesh on the ground, but your ability to bring forth life from the dust will be taken away." That's it. You've thrown it away. She actually threw this away. I brought sermons on this and pointed this out. She actually threw it away because of her rebellion. You will go to your punishment, that is your grave, your death. It's a prophesied thing that she's brought upon herself. No, Yahweh's not going to, Christianity paints this picture, Archangel Michael or whatever is coming down with a sword to slay Satan, this beast with a half human and half dragon, with goat feet and, horns on their head, is just going to come and slay her with the sword, and then she will die. And she will find her rest at that time. This is the way Christianity has always portrayed their Savior, as some warrior-like king who comes to take vengeance on all their enemies because of all the bad that the enemies have done to them. Not taking into consideration what Isaiah 59, 1 and 2 says, that their own sins, our own iniquities, is what cut us off from Yahweh. The children of Israel's own sins, their own iniquities, cut them off from Yahweh. When they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, Yahweh kept the enemies at bay. They had peace on every side. Remember when Solomon, the great King Solomon, was ruling at that time, when Yahweh had set him up after his father David had died? They had peace for 40 years. 40 years they had peace. It wasn't because they had the biggest army in the land. It wasn't because they had the most technologically advanced medical system on earth. It was because everyone was taught and agreed to uphold the every word of Yahweh. And that brought peace to an entire nation. Even their enemies were at peace with them. And they, of course, when they're at peace with you, they're not your enemies, right? People came from different parts of the land to see. The Queen of Sheba came to see all of this that she heard about, because she said, there ain't no nation on the face of the earth that's got peace. I need to see this with my own eyes. I don't think Queen of Sheba sound like that. But she had to go see this by herself, and she did, and she witnessed it, and she testified, and even the scriptures show that she's going to testify against those who didn't believe these things and didn't obey these things, and she was amazed at how even the lowest servant in Solomon's house was so joyous at what they did. You couldn't get them to leave their jobs. You couldn't go and offer them a job in the oil field and they'd be like, well, Solomon, it's been great, but unless you can offer me a few more shekels, No, they were completely content and joyous in what the office that they were given to do. And this is how it's going to be throughout all eternity in the kingdom of Yahweh. Irregardless of what office and position we have, we're gonna love it, and nobody could ever persuade us to go the other way. But he says here, she didn't believe Yahweh, and this is what we have to do. And you will be destroyed. She will destroy herself on that day by Yahweh, which is that's the scriptures by Yahweh, but Yahweh's allowing this to occur. That is a false translation there. Yeah, Yahweh said it, but Yahweh is not destroying her. He said, you will destroy yourself. You will destroy yourself. But Yahweh lives forever. Remember why Yahweh is the way he is. You remember? Why is Yahweh the way he is? That's right. He chooses to be. He is righteous because he chooses to be. As the sons of Yahweh, remember the sons are those who carry on the Father's name, who builds the house of their Father. And carrying on that name Yahweh, we have to be righteous, not because we're afraid of death, not because we're afraid that we're going to get caught or we won't get the position that we want, but because we choose to be. We choose to be. I want you, if you have your scriptures here, in Romans chapter 8, verse 35. It says here, who will separate you from the love of the Messiah? Will tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Now, if you look down to verse 39 there, it says, nor height, nor depth, nor any other thing in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of Yahweh, which is in Yeshua, Messiah, our King. Now, if you go back to Psalms 119, in verse 165, it says, great peace have they who love your law, and nothing will offend them that is caused to fall away because of unbelief or sin. So we can see, in looking at these two scriptures, that the power to stand with Yahweh is in our own hands. It's in our own minds. We have the ability to open and shut that gate to determine what goes into our minds and what we choose to dwell on and what we choose to lock out, right? Because the first word in that scripture in Romans 8:35 was who? Who will separate you from the love of the Messiah? So, yes, we need to be on guard and we need to be careful of external influences that come from the adversary and so forth, but we also need to know our own hearts and our own minds. We also need to examine ourselves to make sure that we're walking uprightly before Yahweh. We also need to be careful that we're not thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought to. Because when a person does that, they think that they can do no wrong. You can't tell them anything because they're already reached a level of righteousness. I'm already a priest. I'm just waiting for my black kippah. I've heard, and in that way they look down upon not only the priest, but they look down upon their fellow man. Remember, we grow together as a family and as a body of Messiah. Praise Yahweh. So we need to be on guard, and we need to watch our minds, watch our hearts. Remember, the heart can be very deceitful, but of course Yahweh changes the heart through righteousness. Let's look over to verse 48. Verse 48 there. It says, look down to Exodus 20:20. Exodus 20:20 says that's your perfect vision. 2020, right? Did you even compute that? Perfect vision is 2020, and this is what it brings you when you submit. 2020 vision, perfect, clear vision. Vision as in not in how well you can see, but how you see the future and see yourself in the future. Plan it. You've got to plan what you're going to do. Plan. I'm not going to be rebellious anymore. I'm going to repent to Yahweh, and I'm going to prove I can follow this rule. The pastor says, is everyone reading? He gave you 10 commandments. Even the King James Version says in Revelations 22:14, blessed are those who keep the commandments That word comes from the commandment, is actually debar and means law. Okay, and so we have to prove ourselves to Yahweh and seeing this great plan that Yahweh has, and we should see ourselves in it. Have you thought, really taken a moment to think? I remember when I was younger. Of course, we always were all younger, right? 5 minutes ago, we were younger. And I remember when I was sitting in the audience, and I was a deacon in the House of Yahweh, and me and another great priest now, brother friend, I remember looking up. I mentioned that before, looking up on that stage up there, and then looking at the priest, during the Seder meal and everything, and I was like, man, one day I want to be a part of that priesthood, and it was a strong desire that I had, and I did some visualization too. I had the whole thing in my mind, sitting in the audience from the house of Yahweh, blah, blah, me running down the aisle and everything, I had the whole thing visualized in my mind, and the work that would be done after that, that I had already witnessed what the priests were doing, but I had not only a desire and a visualization for it, but I was planning for it in my mind, improving to Yahweh as well through my works and through my attitude and so forth, and my words, that I wanted to be the right puzzle piece to fit in this, whole picture that Yahweh was painting here. Had already painted, but he was putting the little pieces together. I want to be a part of this body, to be, more of a servant in this house. And so, it's necessary. In the Peaceful Solution, we talk about goals, right? We talk about goals and planning and even I think it's in the Reverence of Yahweh. Keep the goal in sight. It might be in the Going On to Perfection. I can't remember. But there's a series of sermons that Pastor gives talking about keeping the goal in sight. And so, even Yahweh has a plan. Yahweh has goals, and he writes these things down so that we can see it, and so it's before him. He keeps reminders before him. So this is how important this aspect of having plans, having goals, writing things down, keeping reminders before you so that, you can make sure you're going in the direction that you're wanting to go, and that you can mark when you accomplish a particular goal, or you reach a particular goal or something like that. These things are very important. Don't take them lightly. It'll help you in setting your mind in advance and seeking the kingdom, because there's a lot that goes into seeking the kingdom. You can't just, I want to be in the kingdom. I just want to be in the kingdom. There's a lot more that goes into it. You're with your studies and your actions, putting forth the works now shows Yahweh that you're seeking the kingdom, right? Coming to Sabbath services, coming to the feast, and making your holy convocations, your appointments with Yahweh, shows Yahweh you're seeking the kingdom. Dwelling together in unity and in love with your brother, working together in unity and peace, shows Yahweh you're seeking the kingdom. What we're doing right now is training us for the kingdom. This is a pre-kingdom, if you want to call it. But it's a pattern of the heavenly. Now there'll be more power that we'll receive later once we get our authority and we're changed, but we're going to be doing a lot of the same things that we're doing now. But more of it's going to be on us for teaching and judging and guiding and so forth. No, you won't have to pick stickers up throughout all eternity, like Pastor says. You didn't come here, to train to be a painter or to do this or that. What you do is a part of building your character, to become a teacher of righteousness. Those things add to it, but you're not training to paint the outside walls of Yahweh Shema throughout all eternity, right? Okay, so keep that in mind. Don't look at the things that you go through. If they seem a drudgery to you, then we have to start changing our mind to show that we're here, to remember that we're here to prove ourselves to Yahweh, that in wherever he places us, we can be like him. We'll joyfully serve in building up the body of Yahweh. Well, let's see here. Pastor talks about Exodus 20:20. Moshe said to the people, "Do not fear." Notice here, Yahweh has come to test you. Let's look over to verse. Kind of move forward a little bit here. Let's look over to verse 73 here. Go back to verse 73 on page 250, or forward to verse 73. Pastor says, "You're going to be given authority to gather together his elect, who are the 5 lamps of the 7-lamp lampstand. You'll do that under the direction of Yeshua, who was the first lamp who had to be. Although people died before him, he became their high priest. There wasn't ever a righteous high priest on earth until Yeshua. All who came before him were not qualified for his job. He's high priest. He's a sinless high priest. The high priest before him had to offer, remember, they had to offer sacrifices for themselves first and then for the congregation. The sacrifices didn't forgive sins. They only reminded them of their sins, those sacrifices that they offered for sins. They didn't forgive their sins. Those sacrifices didn't. Remember, they were just a reminder. And this is, even the sacrifice that of our lips, even when we go and we confess to the priest, and of course the priests have the authority to forgive sins, but we still have to prove ourselves to Yahweh, and we do that by stop sinning. We stop sinning. Let him who stole steal no more. If you lust, stop lusting. Right? If you're a person who lies and is angry all the time, get rid of it. Because I guarantee you, when at the time of sentencing, and I think about this too, when I have shortcomings, we will think how easy it would have been to put that away when we had the opportunity, and now we don't. Right? How easy it would have been just to stop rebelling. How easy it would have been to be humble. How easy it would have been just to follow instructions with a joyous attitude. But at that point, it'll be too late. You see? So Yahweh's giving us the space and the opportunity to repent, as Acts 3:19 says, and convert to keeping his laws, to being just like Yahweh. So here let's see here. In verse 80, I'm going to close it up here in a little bit here. In verse 80 it says, "For it is in Adam all die," right? All die. And in verse 84 he says, "In the same way all who are as Messiah will be made alive." And of course, if we continue on this path that Yahweh's called us to right now, in these last days, we know the first man, Adam, he brought death to all mankind, right? He had authority, but he lost it, just like the first sons of Yahweh. Yeshua earned the authority, and he's going to have it forever. Now, he's training us and leading and guiding us as the high priest over the house of Yahweh to qualify for that same authority, not as high priest, but the authority that Yahweh has given or promised to the sons of men. And if we will hold fast and push, like pastors always said, cram for the exam and be serious about it, be serious about our salvation, working it out, like working out the kinks, working out the cramps, working out the wrinkles and the spots, putting forth every effort that we have, then we will qualify and we will have an eternal place in Yahweh's kingdom that is guaranteed to stop all suffering on earth and throughout the entire universe because of sin. Like the great Khan mentioned, there'll be that voice saying, "This is the way, walk you in it." And as people hear that, they'll stop and they'll think and they'll make changes, because it's going to be continuously going out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we're gonna stop right there. Yahweh bless your understanding. And